In this workshop, you will learn helpful tips and skills in becoming a believable character. This workshop will help you on that by telling you what you need to know with internal visualization, external visualization, exercises that you can apply, and how to prepare yourself for that audition night. Now, as a director, this is what I feel that actors need to use to become a believable character, and just instead of someone just saying lines on frame, "Hi mom, I'm on TV, I feel nothing, but I'm just saying lines so I can get a paycheck." That's not acting, that's just getting away with whatever on frame and getting paid for it. But you need to know that when you come to audition night, directors are wanting to see if you're going to be able to pull off that character, especially if it's a $1 million budget film. Someone doesn't want to pay millions of dollars for someone that doesn't know how to act. And they also don't want to get the critics to rip apart their movie saying, yeah, the movie was great, except so-and-so really sucked when it came to film acting. But we also know, too, as directors, that you're very nervous when it comes to giving your monologues at an audition. Now, this workshop will help you to learn how to relax and break down your character, and how to project your lines that you're not giving it to the director, so that you don't have that eye contact, because he is not bouncing off of your character. He's writing down to see if you're going to get the part or not. But you'll be able to learn from this workshop how to bypass that nervousness so you can just deliver the fun part of a character. I think it's great to be a character for a day. I don't have to wait till Halloween to dress up for a certain character. I can be a character any time of day and get away with it. But this workshop will help you to do that. Before you begin your road onto becoming a believable character, you must first do one major step, and that is to relax. I'm going to teach you some positioning and breathing techniques that will help you to relax your body and to separate yourself from your most busiest day that you've had, an argument, or whatever's been on your mind throughout the day. Let me show you an example. Here's an example of what your body needs to be positioned when starting the art of relaxation. First, you want to pick a spot in the middle of your floor or somewhere else that gives you plenty of room to do this. But you want to lay flat on your back. You want to have a slight arch with your back. You want to have your neck totally straight so that you just keep in line with your spine. With your legs, you don't want them to be too spread apart, but you want them to just be slightly extended, not all the way and not fully bent, just slightly so it feels relaxed. And then you want to have your eyes shut. And you'll want to do this probably between 10 to 15 minutes, just depending on the time that you have. If it's before a rehearsal or before an audition, just do it right before you leave to that, and you'll be pretty much focused on your character. One of the most vital parts of relaxation is the breathing. Now, a lot of people have laughed when I've told this because it really reminds them of Karate Kid Part 2, but you must breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. But you want to keep a really steady rhythm when you come to breathing. You don't want to be, you just want to be just steady, just breathe in and then breathe out. But on the breathing out, it's going to be a little bit differently than your normal breathing. And what you want to do is you want to push out all of the air so that you can empty out the bottom parts of your lungs. That's why your body has that small arch and you're stretched out the way you are, so that you can open up those lungs, because the most vital part of relaxating is breathing. So you want to breathe in and breathe out. Now, some tips that actually help even with your speech and working on your voice and relaxating is breathe in, and then when you exhale, you'll say words like Z, 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 or bubble, 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 or just any words that you want to throw in there that will help to just kind of help relax the body. But I found out that Z, 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 Z's and even just exhaling that will really help take the stress right out of your body. The one that I highly recommend is a forest scene and something with green hills and a nice quiet stream. You first want to start off by taking your mind and slowly leaving the room. Now, to do that, you'll want to be thinking of a pink bubble that will encase your body, And then you want to start on how that bubble feels to you. Words that are very commonly used are, I feel safe, it's warm, I do not feel any tension, I'm starting to feel that this bubble will take care of me. Just whatever the comforting terms and lines that you would like to create will be fine for the exercise. From there, you want to slowly start to leave the place that you're at. You don't want to suddenly end up in your forest or whatever scene that you're creating. You have to slowly take yourself there. To do this, you'll want to be imagining that inside of the bubble, you are being lifted up off of the floor or the ground, wherever you're at, and then slowly leaving the house, and then gradually speeding up the bubble as you start to fly over the countryside, and then make the transition between the city or wherever you're at to the country. From there, you gradually bring your bubble down to the ground or the grass, and then you start bringing in sounds, feeling, and whatever else you want to add to your scene. I usually put people next to the stream so that on one side of their ear, they're imagining that they're hearing a stream to the right, and off to the left, maybe where your forest is located, you'll hear birds or other animals that bring relaxation to you. Then, when you're done in this world that you've created, then you allow that bubble to encase your body again. From there, you'll want to bring yourself slowly back to where you're located. Then you'll want to slowly open your eyes. Now, you don't want to sit up quickly, because if your body has been relaxed, then there's going to be problems of kind of like a head rush. So what you're wanting to do is you want to turn on your right side or your left, it doesn't matter, and then slowly bring your hand to the floor, and then gradually bring yourself up until you're ready. One thing that is very hard as a director is putting up with stressed out actors. I totally understand what people are coming from either busy days or just long days or sleep deprivation or even putting up with freeway driving. But this is a vital key that you must have in the art of relaxation so that you can detach yourself from whatever's happened in your day. So, learn what I just explained about laying your body down, doing the breathing techniques, and even with the words and expressions to help relax your body, so then you'll be able to focus on your character. What is internal visualization? Well, break down your character starts at your past. Where do you come from? Who are you? Do you have brothers and sisters? Are you married? Are you gay? I know that sounds funny, but when it comes to specific movies like that I've made, like fantasy, I had to ask how this woman who was in second in command of this Dark Lord, how she felt about men and women. Well, being that she was second in command and she was a woman, she had to put on the more gruff type of attitude to where she wouldn't take any garbage from any of the horde members that were underneath her. And so it's very important to know what your background is. Were you abused when you were a child? Now, a lot of people say, well, that doesn't call for any of that in a script, but you must build a background before you can even build off of any of that to become the character that you're wanting to be. Now, even though it might not be written in the script, you can still create it, just make sure that you tweak it when it comes to what the director wants. Now, once you've come up with your background, then you can begin on breaking down the present of your character. Now, the present with your character would mean what is going on in your mind and what's going on in your heart. Now, one of the best films I've ever seen that explain this is Gladiator. Now, a lot of people think that you have to say lines and stuff to express yourself, and if I don't get a line in your film, then I'm not going to be in it. Well, Gladiator in the opening sequence really expresses exactly what he's feeling, but he doesn't say one word. Now, a lot of you probably haven't seen Gladiator, but the scene that's being expressed in the movie is that it shows a hand and someone walking through a wheat field. And you have very beautiful music by Hans Zimmer to overlay and to express almost what's going on. Now, then it cuts to the general, which is the Gladiator character, or Russell Crowe's character. And you see that he's looking down and he's just expressing himself and in just a tender moment because his mind is away and he's thinking of, this place. Then he looks off and comes into what's happening in his surroundings, and you see smoke going over a part of some tree branches and stuff, but you see that there's this beautiful little songbird that's there, and the songbird flies away, but you know that he was looking at it because he looks off as it flies away, and he just has a slight smile. And then comes the moment when the mantle of general just takes over, and then he marches through his camp, through his soldiers and that. And it's just beautiful because you know exactly what he's thinking about. He's thinking about his home. He's thinking about just something that separates him from this war that he's been fighting for a couple of years for Rome. The next thing I'd like to talk about for internal visualization is extras. Now, a lot of people I've dealt with and seen in the past is, oh, I was an extra on this film. All I did is walked on and off a frame. Now, if you're just going to a movie and you're just going to play an extra and you talk like that, then maybe you're not really in the right field because it's like you don't care about even a simple part as an extra. Again, like I said before, you might not have any lines in the film, but you can still create the most believable character. Take, for instance, New York City. New York, just take any clip of the most busiest time of the day, taxi drivers going all over the place, but cut to a scene of a four-way stop, and you have, let's say, 50 to even 100 people crossing the street. Now, anyone that looks at that says, well, that's just an extra, and they're just walking across the street. However, if you happen to walk into that movie and you grabbed hold of someone and pulled them into the reality world, and you ask them who they are, they'd probably say, my name is Bob. And you say, well, what do you do? Well, I'm a business accountant at some firm. Well, do you have any children? Yes, I've been married for 3 years and I have 2 kids. And what's on your mind? Well, I just lost my job, or I just came from lunch and I'm running late for work. And so that's why I was running across the street very quickly, because I was late for my job. Now, the director might tell you, just act normally and stuff like that. Well, just create the character. Don't act as yourself. Just act like a totally another person. And so the term extra, when it comes to my filmmaking, you're more of background talent, because that's what actors and actresses are when you come onto a film. Now, the third thing I'd like to bring up with internal visualization, it's kind of an extra part to this, is what's happening within the frame. The French call it mise en scene. I just call it mise en scene half the time, but more or less, it's what's going on in the frame. Again, it's like that New York scene. What is all being told in that story? Well, for that clip, it's probably to show how busy New York is, but also it shows it's city life. It's noisy. There's people honking horns. There's people that could care less about other people. In short, it's what's happening in the day of New York. Now, there's an example that I'd like to show you that it's actually kind of a picture that I have at my home that I use as a teaching tool to just kind of express something of what the director is really trying to say. So let me show you that example right now. Right here you have a general picture. It looks like something that's happened in the mountains, but before I explain anything more, I'd like you to close your eyes. When you open your eyes, you're going to see what first comes to your acknowledgement. So 3, 2, 1, open your eyes. What's the first thing that you saw? But most people say, I saw the tree first. Well, maybe the director wants you, or the artist wants you to see the tree because maybe there's something more important. However, I as a director would like to teach you to look beyond what is just in the foreground, what is happening in the background. Now, some people might say, well, it looks like there's some dots back here, but actually is a representation of 2 people. Now, how old are they? Are they teenagers? Are they adults? Who knows? The point is that there's 2 people on some hillside back here. Now, studying out the rest of the picture, what else is here? Well, we got a pond or a lake down here. You got some ground. But did you notice the hidden house that's hidden in the pine trees? Is someone sitting on the porch here? Is that a door? Is that whatever? But most people would not see that there was a hidden house here unless they studied the picture a little bit longer. They'd first see the tree, they'd maybe see the blue sky, they'd see the two children or adults, but they wouldn't quickly see this house that's over here. That is the overall breakdown of the mise-en-scene of this picture. What I'm trying to express is that there might be more of a story being explained in the background, not just always what's put in the foreground. Now, disclaimer on this is that I don't want to be blamed after you learn this skill that whenever you go to the movies and you see film, that suddenly you start noticing the background just jumps out at you. So if you happen to be background talent, or you happen to be an extra or a bit player, you'll concentrate on what's happening back here, because if there is something major happening up front with the main characters, like something's going on, you got to make sure that what you're doing in the background does not detract from what's happening in the foreground, because movement really draws the eye very quickly. That's why in theater, on the stage, most people control their movement to where they don't move at all unless they're speaking, because the moment that someone moves, it totally causes everyone to look that direction and might detract from the main character. Once you have built your past and your history with your character, and you know what you want with your heart and your mind for the present, then you must move to your objectives. Objectives is the most important thing that will help audiences see and know what you are wanting throughout the film or script that you're reading or playing in. Now, objectives can be as simple as a romantic comedy like Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan in You've Got Mail. They always check their emails every single day and they wonder what's going on, and their objective is to check that email and to see if they got an email from the other person. And then comes the moment when their objective actually slightly changes toward the end, to where Tom Hanks does find out that Meg Ryan is the one he's typing, and then he has his own obstacles, which we'll talk a little bit later on, to where he finally starts overcoming them, to where he moves towards Meg Ryan, and his new objective is to tweak her and to get her to fall in love with him in the right way instead of just being cyber pals, until finally in the end he does get her, and they fall in love and it's happily ever after. Once you have learned your internal visualization, which is learning your background, your past, what's going on in your mind and your heart, and you know what your objectives are, then you'll be ready to move on to the next step, which is external visualization. Once you've gotten your internal visualization, now you move on to your external visualization. Now, what is external visualization? It's everything that happens on the outside of your character. Now, the first stage of external visualization is tactics. What are tactics? Tactics are the things that you will use to get your objective. Now, I've seen a lot of film throughout my years, and I've came up with about 3 major tactics that are used. 1 is body language, 2 is voice, and 3 is touch. Now, with body language, it's everything that you're doing. It's moving, it's blinking, it's just everything that you're adding to express how your character is feeling. Now, a good example of this is the movie Somersby with Richard Gere and Jodie Foster. Now, if you've not seen the movie, I'll just explain the film to you. The story is about a man that comes home. He used to be very abusive to his wife, but you later find out that he is actually a kind of like a twin brother, or he's an imposter of the original husband. But as he's coming back home and how he left his wife, she's very distant. She really doesn't have anything really to do with him. But his tactic that he uses later on is body language, and he moves in close and comes just like, an inch or 2 away from her mouth, almost wanting to kiss her, but then he retreats and moves away from her. So it's just kind of like that cat and mouse thing between 2 characters. And that's really a good example of body language. Now, one tip that I would like to give is on the blinking. A lot of people, when they're expressing their lines, they don't see how much blinking that they're doing. Sometimes when you watch a movie, if there's like this dramatic moment and, you think that, their eyes should be just stationary, and all of a sudden within a line, they do this like slow blink. Some people just don't notice that. I notice it. And it just sometimes can really take away from the moment if someone's just suddenly blinking, or suddenly they have something in their eye and they're blinking like a maniac. But more or less really concentrate on in between your breaths and how you express your lines, and the blinking involved will really help on your body language. The second one is voice. Voice is a major tactic in getting your objective. If it's a love scene or a tender moment between two people, you're not going to be talking like this, saying, yo, let's have a candlelight dinner tonight and stuff like that. That's just going to pull the audience right out saying, okay, this is a joke of a film, unless that's supposed to be a comedy. But for a drama, you want to have more of a relaxational voice to where, honey, let's have a nice candlelight dinner tonight and, enjoy the evening together. That type of voice is something that you'll want to use for like a scene like that. But really, voice is very important. Now, a good example of this is Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Everyone knows this film. It's a cult classic in the 80s, and I'm referring to the teacher. He literally has a full monotone voice of Bueller, Fry, anyone, voodoo, economics. He just has this most annoying voice. However, for his character, it was the perfect voice because, like most high schoolers, when they're in the most boring class of all time, the teacher always sounds like they're monotone and you just want to just about die, which is about what happened to half of those students. But his character, he chose to have that type of voice, and it pulled off the perfect character. Lastly, touch. Touch is probably one that's sometimes overrated when it comes to movies. And why I bring that up is that just think of these movies that have these steamy love scenes or major makeout sessions just to literally take away the experience with the audience. And that's what you do not want to do. However, depending on the type of film that you're making or script that you're reading, you want to have that kind of cat and mouse game. But you want to keep the sexual tension high. Now, I don't mean by sexual tension as in, let's just drop down and go at it and it's sex. It's just the connection between the two actors. A good example of this is the movie X-Files. Mulder and Scully, they've had, all this years and time together. They've gone through the most unnatural experiences. They've saved each other's lives. And then comes the moment of truth that everyone's been waiting for throughout the whole season, that they've never kissed each other. They never had their sex or whatever. But the moment comes when they're inside the hallway and they finally just have this moment where they start coming together, and they slow down the scene to where she starts inching towards him and she gets like 2 inches away from him. And it's just the moment of truth. And then they get distracted by the bee that stings her in her neck. But the writer knew exactly what he was doing, because you have to continue that sexual tension between the two. Because let's say, okay, they kissed. We finally got to that point. Now let's say that they finally have a love scene together. Now there's no movie. Now it's just adding another movie to the list of all these other films that have been done, to where they finally have their one night stand and then they go from there. But remember, touch. Withhold it as long as you can, and then finally release it, depending on the type of scene that you're wanting to do. Now, after you got all your tactics broken down to, then comes obstacles. Obstacles are just about anything that gets in the way of your objective within the script or the movie. Objectives could also be like the antagonist. How are you going to get rid of your antagonist so that by the end you win whatever? Obstacles could be as simple as, your car gets in a car wreck and you're on your way to deliver flowers to ask your girlfriend her hand in marriage. It's just simple objectives like that. But it also will show to the audiences that something has now just gotten in the way of your character. Now let's show really what you're going to do to heighten your tactics to get that objective. If it's just a simple little thing and they don't see that there's no obstacles, then the audience doesn't really get to feel the plot, and they just say, oh, that was hardly a film at all. It had this weak plot and I just didn't really feel much towards the character. But when an audience sees a character and sees them start to do whatever it takes to get their objectives and they get past their obstacles and everything, then it shows that you're becoming more of a believable character. A good example of an actor showing that he has obstacles that heightens his tactics is the film Family Man with Nicolas Cage. At the very end of the film, he's running through an airport to get his wife's attention so that they can come together and then hopefully later get married and become husband and wife. And talk about obstacles. He had an airport to deal with, so you have all the noise and busyness of a major airport as he's trying to deliver his lines on keeping her from not going on that plane. And the other obstacle it was for her not to go on that plane because she had the ticket, she was heading, and she was going to be gone. So his tactics that he used was not touch, because he had a distance between the two. And it wasn't just voice, even though he had to project himself saying, don't get on that plane. And, and of course he expressed just how he was feeling. And then body language, there's really not a whole lot you could do from a whole far away, except for more of a penitent, humble type of character from a distance. So you have more of like the slouch shoulders and more of the expressions. Most of the expressions is going to be in the face. And so there's more body language that's in the face. But an added tactic that he did was he started to express to her about their children that they had. He expressed things that she did that just made him happy, and just things like that to get her to internally visualize these feelings that he was trying to express. And so this was just the most excellent film in expressing that. So that is external visualization. Once you've broken down your tactics, either body, voice, or touch, and knowing what your objectives are, then you're ready to become a believable character. I have also created 3 exercises that you can use to help further along the process to help you for that audition night or your audition tape later on. The exercises that I've come up with are 3 of them. One is the dot test, the second one is the mirror test, and 3 is bouncing off another character. Now the dot test seems to be a new term used lately that I found out in a lot of the last few auditions that I've had, that a lot of directors do not do the dot test. Most people, when they come to audition, they think they're going to either do a cold read or bounce off another character. But when I went through acting school, they actually explained the dot test, and that's why I've applied it to part of the building of a better character exercise. Now, with the dot test, you want to just stand in the middle of the room, and you'll want to pick a dot in front of you, slightly above your headline, and then you'll deliver your monologue to that dot. Or if you're doing a script, then you'll just read all the lines that have your parts, but that more or less is a monologue. And you'll want to go through all of your objectives, all of your tactics, the way that you express yourself, all your facial expressions, everything that's going to take you to be that believable character, but you're going to bounce off of that dot. Now, when I bring that up, it means that even though the dot does not bounce back, you still are going to act like it. That is where the talent of an actor comes through, because one thing that's very helpful with the dot test is that when you are going to be shooting on frame, that camera might be stuck right in your face and you're not going to have someone to bounce off of. And if you pick a dot above the dot, to the side of the camera, whatever it takes, you won't be distracted by seeing that camera in your way. And you just imagine that the other character's there. So when you go to your auditions or you do an audition tape or whatever, you'll want to just stand in a kind of a small box area in your mind, to where you don't want to put too much movement when you start delivering your lines. You also don't want to take your eyes off of the dot, because the director or whoever is watching you is going to wonder, why are you looking off to the side? Why are you, looking over there? Is there something over there that you're seeing within the world that you're creating? So if you just focus on a dot right in front of you and just focus so much on it, then the director that's down below you will be able to do his job, and you won't be distracted from looking at him. That will be better for you just to pick a dot. And so that's what you'll want to do. Now, once you've gotten the dot test down, then you'll want to move to the mirror exercise. And all you have to do is get a mirror. You can go into the bathroom and look yourself in the mirror. You can even do this in the morning when you're brushing your teeth, or just have a few moments to yourself to look in the mirror. And you'll do the exact same thing that you did with the dot test, but this time you're applying the facial expressions with it, so you can actually see how your face is reacting to your lines, and seeing if you're really liking the way that your character is coming across. But you're also your own critique person, to where you'll be able to actually say, you know what, I don't think this character is really happy at this moment, and so maybe I should bring more to a subdued, or maybe even to a depressed state when I deliver my lines when I'm looking in the mirror. Then when you get the mirror test done, then you can move to the third exercise, which is where you actually bounce off another character. And a lot of people love this. They think they can just go straight into the third exercise and not even worry about the other two. And then they start realizing that really how much harder it is to sometimes bounce off of another character. So you want to make sure that you do those first two before the third one. But then you can get your roommate, you can get your wife or your husband, whoever, to bounce off, to where you'll be able to actually start moving around and start doing either your body language, your voice, or even your touch to get your objective. And then, of course, your counterpart or partner will be able to bounce off of you and make it either easy or hard for you to get your objectives, which can be quite fun. So these are the three exercises that you can do. The dot test, again, just look at the dot, deliver your lines, and nothing exists except for that dot. The second one is the mirror test. You'll want to pick a time that you'll be able to look into a mirror, deliver your lines, look at your facial expressions, really see how you're delivering your lines, and then move to the third and final stage where you can bounce off another character and really work towards so that you'll do fine at the audition. Now that you got your internal visualization, your external visualization, and exercises to apply to, then you are ready to do your audition night. Now, some tips for preparing for that audition night. Now, you want to take time away from your busy schedule and your busy life to concentrate on your character. You want to separate yourself from your normal self and move into the character. So first, relax. Do the 10 to 15 minute art of relaxation by laying down, listening to music, doing a script. Do what you need to concentrate on relaxing. So then you'll be able to concentrate on your character. Now, when you do go into the audition, don't worry about what the director's thinking. Don't worry about the other actors and extras and people that are also there for the audition. Pick a corner and just concentrate on your character. When you do deliver your lines to the director, don't worry about being nervous. There's always that moment of, oh, am I going to do this right? Or am I going to say this right? And suddenly you start getting flustered. Don't worry about it. Just, you're going to get the part or you're not. And so you got a 50-50 shot. The director is going to be looking beyond your nervousness. He wants to make sure that you are willing to show that you really want this part. So if he sees that you have the internal visualization by the way that you're expressing with your external visualization, then you'll have a really good shot at getting the part. That is the workshop on becoming a believable character. It's actually quite simple if you really break it down, but it's always the time that it takes to do all of that. Again, internal visualization, you want to break down your past and move into your present, which is what your heart and mind is doing. Then you'll be able to move on to external visualization, which is what your body is doing to express what's going on inside, which is your body language, your voice, and your touch, and how you're using those tactics to overcome your obstacles so that you can get your objective. From there, you'll be able to move into those easy exercises that using the dot test, using the mirror test, and then bouncing off another character. And then you'll be able to move on to your audition and you'll do fine. Don't worry about being nervous. Don't worry about what the director is thinking. Just take the time to relax and concentrate on your character. That's all auditions are. That's all audiences want to see when they go to a movie. They want to see a believable character and not someone that's getting paid millions of dollars of just saying lines. Again, thank you for your time. Enjoy acting and continue on becoming a believable character.